Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski.
Today on the podcast, we're picking up someone in transit home from a vacation down on the shore. It's a Western Pennsylvania runner from the early 70s. I had the pleasure of competing in the same district, and I had the good fortune to be in a different class of competition, so I didn't have to race against this guy most of the time. Welcome on the podcast today, Dave Felice. Welcome.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that.
Dave, let's introduce you with your competitive sports or competitive running origin story. When, how, and why did you get into your first competitions?
Growing up, I played soccer, a lot of other sports, even teen or league baseball, everything else, competitive tennis. It's really funny. My next oldest brother, he's quite a bit older than me, is a tennis pro in Albuquerque. People used to come by the house years ago and they saw a handful of tennis trophies. My brother was Joe, and they said, "Oh, Joe left some of his trophies here." I said, "No, those are mine, actually. I could play a pretty decent game of tennis." But pretty much where it got competitive was the spring of my 8th grade year. I had a coach named Danny Greendonor, who up until just recently worked the finish line at the PIAA track meet. He was always right there at the finish line. Back then it was a junior high, not a middle school, but I was at Westerly Parkway Junior High, and he was our coach. Back then it was the 880 and not the 800. He says, "I saw you been running early in the season." I said, "I want to put you in the 880 because I think that'll be a good race for you." The rest was kind of history. I started winning a lot of 880s all over the place, like Mansion Park against Keith Junior High and Roosevelt Junior High, and going up and running at Du Bois and other places throughout. It was kind of fun. We'd run these junior high meets. And so it seemed like that was okay. Going into my 9th grade year, I really was going to play soccer, but Steve Gentry, there's a name from the past, former state champion from the 60s. And one of my first coaches, he talked me into going out for cross country my 9th grade year. I thought, all right, we'll give this a try, because I had my heart set on playing midfield soccer. I'd really play a pretty competitive game of soccer. I was, okay, we'll give this a try. The rest is sort of history. Went out for cross country 9th grade year, and it went pretty well. I lettered all 4 years, and it's good that I did, because it definitely was a good upbringing. Yeah, Steve was quite an influence early on. Of course, Jackson Horner, Mr. Horner, was pretty much a legendary coach. He ended up being, where I think it was the early 80s, he was a national coach of the year, Jackson Horner. These guys really got me going. They really taught you competition, but also to be a good person too. And I think that goes hand in hand, really.
Who else was around there? Names people might know. There were a lot of successful runners. Steve Gentry, of course, state champion. Who were your teammates as a 9th grader? Anybody you looked to and said, there's somebody I want to emulate or accomplish with or to?
Yeah, Dave Mangle. We call him Marty Mangle or Dave Mangle. He was a year ahead of me. He was a 10th grader then, but he was a really good runner for state high. And it was just a really good teammate to train with. And he was also in the top 10 at states his senior year. And that was my junior year. I was 7th. He was 9th my junior year. And I had a bad start in that race. I think it could have either won it or been second, but that's a long time ago. But yeah, Dave was really good. There were a lot of good people around then. I had different teammates. There was a Bill Cavache, who was a senior when I was a 9th grader. He went into Marine Corps, and then he came out of the Marine Corps, came to Penn State. He made the Penn State team. And it's a funny thing, coming full circle, he ended up being a teammate of mine at Penn State then. Bill was. He was a really good guy to run with, and just a lot of good people in the area.
Also in track, you had some athletes in the field which were getting the same level of success that you were in distance running. I think the Suey brothers and a few others.
Yeah, Matt Suey, who eventually played for the Chicago Bears and was a Super Bowl champion with Walter Payton. He was a shot putter and discus thrower, and we grew up together since the 6th grade, and it was just fun having him out on the track team also. His brother Larry, several years before, was a really good 400 runner, but Paul actually played golf, but Paul was he just recently retired as a surgeon, Dr. Paul Suey, a really good guy. He was a state champion in wrestling. Larry was a state champ in wrestling. Matt, of course, was the leading rusher in the state of Pennsylvania in football. My teammate, we were like 2 days apart in the hospital. He stayed out in Chicago. Like I say, he played 10 years for the Chicago Bears. And we had a lot of good athletes on our team. Just Randy Hochberg was a javelin thrower, ended up being a college quarterback. His brother broke his record. He played defensive back for Penn State. Now, Jeff Hochberg, just a lot of good athletes came out of the area here, as did all of Pennsylvania. You look at Western Pennsylvania, not getting away from running, but it's so many great athletes and so many sports have come out of Western PA and Central PA.
Let's talk about what it was like there from your freshman to senior year with the coaching. You had a culture of winning. I thought there might have been a long unbeaten streak. What was the equipment and what was the workouts like for high school kids for you then?
We had the 2-a-day workouts starting usually a couple weeks before school started. Going into my 9th grade year, we didn't have the organization that they have now. As far as we didn't have email back then. We didn't have much of a network. Calling people on the phone was about the only thing you could do back then, or sending a letter. That was it. There was not much as far as communication like we have today. And just ended up last year is my 15th year as a head coach at State College High School and cross country, but that's pretty much the end now for me. I always would assign a handful of captains over the summer. They would get an email list together and then they get a great group. Last year, they had a group of anywhere from 15 to 20 runners almost every day getting together. And that's why we're a top 5, top 6 team in the state every year because guys get together. But back then, going into my 9th grade year, I didn't really know about running over the summer. I had a really good 8th grade junior high track season. But going into my 9th grade year, I thought, I don't think I need to run over the summer. I was really wrong. About the first day of 2-a-days, oh, man, I was dragging my butt home. It was terrible. I was about done. I remember my mom and dad going, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh," I could hardly even walk when I got home. First day of 2-a-days. And my mom, "You're not going to quit. Your brothers would think bad of you if you quit. You're not quitting. That's all there is to it." And I said, "No, I took a couple of days to get over that shock and all." And then I never made that mistake of not running over the summer again. 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, I ran over the summers. That made a difference. So we just got together. There was a guy named Steve Williams, who was a year ahead of me. Mike Williams was one of our managers, but recently retired as a state police captain. Mike, we're Little League players together. But Steve and guys like Kevin Small and a couple other guys that were a year ahead of me, they would come in the summertime, like early in the morning and beat on my window and say, "Get up, come on, you got to come run with us." Oh, okay. I didn't feel like it. I did. And it made a big difference. After a while, you got used to running. And then if you missed a day, you felt really bad, even though you should take a day off occasionally. But then we started, it got infectious after a while. And we started really going into my senior year. I was pretty much running close to 100-mile weeks. I was just running, really putting in the crazy mileage, but we enjoyed it. The only thing is, had a good freshman year, a decent sophomore year, a really good junior year. But going into my senior year in August, we were doing 2-a-days and we were running in a park. It's called Holmes Foster Park in State College. Mr. Horner was running our workouts. Now, our workouts, he asked what those were like. Every morning we ran a really hard speed workout, some sort of intervals. We don't do that anymore. We do it maybe 2 or 3 times a week. We're on speed. Rest of the time, distance, maybe a good tempo workout also. But then it was every morning was speed. Every night was distance. And then Saturday of the middle of 2-a-days was always anywhere from a 10 to 15-mile run. It was a longer run. But going into my senior year, it was looking good because my junior year, we were in the 2-mile relay in the spring, which is down to 4x8. And we end up 4th place overall in the whole state of Pennsylvania. But that's because I got the baton in 5th place. And the first 3 teams were just a little bit too far ahead, but I was catching them. So I ran a good 880. So I figured this is going to be my time. About the second day of 2-a-days, I stepped in a hole and broke a bone in my metatarsal region of my left foot. So I was in a cast half the season. So I came back at the very end of the season and I wasn't near ready yet. I think I ended up like 23rd in the state or 25th in the state. but I got my revenge because that very next spring, every one of those guys that was ahead of me, I outkicked them all in the mile and won the gold medal in the mile my senior year. I got my payback.
I was there for that race. I was at the state meet competing in this Division B or whatever we were called back then, Class
Okay,
AA.
yeah.
I saw that race and you had a devastating kick. I don't know if that was the best kick you've always done or your normal one, but it was a fun race to watch. And you did not set a state record then?
No, but I was just hanging in. And with about 200 meters to go, there was like 8 or 9 of us together right there. And then I just burst through and took off. And I
You kind of look like you kind of look like a Tasmanian devil. I'm not sure if your style was perfect, but there was no doubt who was going to win after about 150 to go. Yeah, it was very cool to watch.
Thank
I
you.
wanted
Now,
to ask-
my best 400, pretty much college and after, I've run a couple 49 point somethings, 400s. And back then, the 440, I was like 50 flat 0.5. So I really felt if I could hang in within a 220 to go, I could outkick everybody. And it worked. The learner actually wanted me to kick coming off the final turn, but it was really weird because somebody stumbled in front of me and about like 8 or 9 of us there was a little hole that opened up. Something in my head said, go now. And boom, I just burst through the hole and just went from there to the finish.
Yeah. I have one more memory of a race of yours that was mid-race, I think. It may have been your junior year or maybe your sophomore year, I'm not sure. And you were about 2 inches behind Marty Mengel for most of the race that I could see. You were like tagged onto his shoulder running as a pair. And I think that was the first time I met you guys. And you were running as a pair then. Did you guys race like that during the season? You two seemed to be ahead of the rest of the pack of state college runners.
Yeah. In the district meet, we took 1, 2 in districts, and then we took 7 and 9 at states that year. And yeah, we fed off of each other. Steel City Invitational earlier that year, it was down in Coatesville. There's about 250 some odd runners. It was a big race back in the day at Coatesville. It's called the Steel City. And we took 1, 2 in that one also. A bunch of Philadelphia area runners. It was fun running together like that.
Let's talk about a little bit more. There is the venues that were there. In the early 70s, just starting the mid 70s, the championships for both cross country and track were in fact at Penn State. So you would eventually go there. How big of a influence or awareness of Penn State, of you and you of Penn State, was taking place during your high school career?
Coach Groves, who was a legendary coach, Harry Groves, he always came over and talked to me a lot, but it's funny. I never really received an offer or anything from Penn State. I think he assumed I was going to go there. I had several offers from several smaller schools, and I was just about to make a decision there when he called me up one day and said, "Hey, I hear you're not going to Penn State." And I said, "Probably not." He said, "Can you come to my office?" It was at Rec Hall at the time. So I went to his office, and same thing. He asked, "Why aren't you coming to Penn State?" And I said, "I haven't received an offer." He said, "Consider this an offer." In his office. And I said, he shook hands with me and said, the rest was history. So I decided kind of at the last minute to run for Penn State.
Well, you knew you were going to be competing at university. I think you had a good feeling about Penn State there. What was your academic transition to university? How'd that go? And how was your transition to running at university level?
Really, the academics at the time at Penn State, I really couldn't find anything I really liked. That was like division of undergraduate students. I was flipped around to different places. I didn't have any good advisement. Counseling was non-existent, and nobody helped me much of anything. I'm still bitter about it to today because there wasn't anything that I really liked. I didn't really get much help with anything. I did enjoy competing. I ended up eventually getting a fire science degree from Midland College in Midland, Texas, because I was a career firefighter there for 12 years. And that helped me get my job, start a new fire inspectors division in State College back in 1992. I finally found something I was interested in. But at the time, I was interested in a couple of things. And what little bit of counseling I had, they would say, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. What am I supposed to do? And they would name things I wasn't interested in. Not at all. Yeah, I didn't think the academic was very well supported there. The running was great though with Coach Groves. He was an amazing coach. He really was. And of course, Coach Groves, Coach Horner are both deceased now. Unfortunately, Coach Groves passed away during the COVID time, and we never really got to have a celebration of life for him. But he was coached Olympians. He coached a lot of national champions, NCAA champions, both in the field events and the running events. He was really sharp in all those. In fact, Brian Milne, you remember, he was a really good fullback for Penn State. He was an NCAA discus champion. Coach Groves coached him in the discus. And yeah, it's amazing.
But what were your successes at Penn State? How did you feel your career went there?
We did okay. Ended up winning several track events, usually placing pretty high up in cross country. Probably the most memorable one was 1978. We were at the Penn Relays and we ran the 4x1500 meter relay. And Mike Wyatt, who eventually became CEO of DuPont for a while, he ran leadoff leg. I ran second leg. Third leg was Tom Rapp, who became in the National Athletes in Action group. And then Bob Snyder ran anchor leg, who has an insurance agency in McConnellsburg. He's a really great guy, super good guy. Anyway, the four of us set an American record that day at the Penn Relays. So that was pretty cool. I actually handed off 2.5 steps in the lead. I ended up passing the guy from Tennessee and passing the guy from Villanova and outkicked them to hand off to Tom Rapp. That was a big highlight, having an American record. We had it for years then, but it was broken after that, but it was okay. It was nice to have an American record for a year.
That's pretty exciting. Was that on the radar? Is that something that surprised you guys, or do you think it was within your reach?
It surprised us, actually. We thought we'd be competitive in that race. We had no idea we were going that fast, though. So I think the Penn Relays, I always tell people that's a who's who in track and field. I believe that other than the Olympic Games, that's the second most prestigious meet in the world is the Penn Relays. It's a who's who of track and field. Just being there with 45, 50,000 people yelling and screaming, and they announce your name when you're getting a baton and all. It's just, wow. But I still remember that getting that baton on a curve because it's 1500 meters. And I remember I saw Mike trying to hand off to me. All of a sudden, several runners just collided. There was this massive, almost a pile up. And my arm was back. I felt a baton in my hand. I hope this is my baton. And I just grabbed it and went from there. And I followed a guy from, I think his last name was Young, from Villanova. And I can't remember the guy from Tennessee that I ran against, but I was just tucked in with them the whole race and then just basically outkicked them at the end and handed off in the lead. It was felt like I was floating but that race, it went out slow and then it ended up going really fast at the end. Our last 400, I'm not sure. It was right around 60. It was one of those kind of 59, 60 last quarters. It was fast. So
was there recognition there of the record? Do you remember what happened? What announcement happened when you got the record?
Yeah, they did actually announce it. And I remember Coach Groves was just really ecstatic, of course. And so are my teammates. And you remember Dolphin running apparel?
Sure.
They originally started in Shillington up by Reading before they went more international. And I remember one of the representatives came by. He just, I didn't realize we had the American record yet. And they were announcing it. And this guy saw me under the stands. I was kind of doing a cool down, looking for my teammates. And this guy goes, "Hey," and it scared me. What? He goes, "Yeah, I saw you run out there and I'm so-and-so from Dolphin. Here's my contact information, but can I get your address and all? I want to send you something." They were allowed to do that. And they sent some running apparel to me and it was cool, really. So yeah, it was neat. Yeah.
Let's talk about the life a scholarship Division I athlete. What was it like? What were the demands on you? What were the advantages as a scholarship student athlete? Did you get any, or was it disadvantages? Did you work any? Were you free to study and work out? What was all that like?
It was eat, run, study, sleep, basically, and try to have a little bit of a social life. And it went okay. I was young. There's things I would do differently if I would have known what I knew now. However, academically, I was pretty average. A's in history, of course, that's always my best subject. But I just struggled through some things because as a track athlete, A lot of times in the spring, we were going to UVA relays in Charlottesville, the University of Virginia, or the Dogwood relays in Knoxville, Tennessee, at the University of Tennessee. Of course, the Penn relays, other meets, the Rutgers relays. We were not Big Ten then. And we're going to different races all over. And I had one or two particular teachers who didn't like me missing their class, even though I had a card from Dr. Coyle, John Coyle. He was one of the deans of business administration. Super great guy. What an amazing guy, amazing man. I really looked up to Dr. Coyle, and he would give us written excuse cards to get out of class. And the one particular English teacher, she didn't care. She was just infuriated that I missed her class. So I know she knocked me down a letter grade because of that. And I remember sharing some of my written assignments with some of my teammates who were very good academically. And they were like, "This is really good writing. What's wrong with this?" I said, "She just doesn't like me because I'm missing her class." I didn't think that was fair because the football players weren't judged that way. They could walk on water. It didn't matter. They always had somebody pulling them out of the swamp if they were in trouble. It's just a figurative speech, of course. But as track, we didn't have much representation. So we were on our own. And I didn't think that was fair at all.
Yeah. Interesting. It was a fairly high status sport at Penn State, I think, because of the success you guys were having. But of course, nothing compared to Division I football. But let me ask you about your own self-perception and looking at running post-college. What were you thinking? Was this something that you thought you would continue doing, competing, running because you liked it? What was your view of post-university running while you were in school?
I thought about continuing running. I wish I would have really focused a little more. My father used to say, "You could probably do this, could probably do that if you would stay focused." But I remember back just after I got out of school there, this is in your neighborhood, 1979. I remember the Johnstown Marathon. I ran a 2:23 marathon there, and I was just about 2 minutes off Olympic qualifying. Didn't realize I was running that fast. Yeah, it was interesting. And later the next year, I went to Block Island, Rhode Island for a race called Twice Around the Block. It was a 15K race. And I remember running a 47:33 15K on the island and end up winning that race, beat some fairly good runners. In fact, I remember Amby Burfoot, he was one of the Runners World guys. He had been a former winner there. And I think he was like third place. I remember we talked a lot afterwards and he said, "Wow, where'd you come from?" And then I decided to get into the fire service. I became a volunteer firefighter here in Bergen State College, and I left some of the running go for a little while. But then I went to Midland, Texas, and I picked up the competitive running again. When I got there as a career firefighter, I started running again and ran some decent 10Ks, 5Ks. And eventually, before I moved back to State College, I ran an ultra. I ran a 50 miler in the Palo Canyon in Amarillo, Texas. It was snow flurrying that day, but I still ran what did I run? 7:14 or something like that. It was a decent, out of the top 20 runners, I was the only one that had never run an ultra. It was the only one I've ever done since, but I did a 50 miler and it went very well.
You might have been the only one with a sub 5400 too.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. We had something called the Texas Firefighter Olympics every year. They still have it, but I don't think they have track and field anymore. They've gone to more of the pickleball and some of the other sports that are fun to play. You can get a workout. I don't think they're doing too much, but when I left there, I remember I had the record in the 800 to 1500 to 5K and the 10K. And I remember running the 4x400 relay at the University of Texas in Austin. I remember getting the baton and a guy from Houston was ahead of us, Houston Fire Department, which was a much larger department than Midland. I remember catching him on the turn 3 and running a 49.9 anchor leg. This is like a 32-year-old.
Wow. Yeah.
Can still run that.
Let me divert to talk about your career as a fighter. And this is a career of service, teamwork. Talk about the nature of being in a service profession, nature of being a firefighter, and the teamwork that goes in there and how that gelled or worked with your personality and competition history.
Being a firefighter, of course, it requires staying in good shape if you're going to, because you just have to. It's the nature of the beast. You go from cold to hot, boom, like that via 911 call, and got to be ready to go. Having that endurance really has paid off, not just for structural firefighting, but for the last 23 years, I've pretty much gone out west almost every year and fought forest fires and high altitude, 10, 12, 14-hour shifts, carrying saws up and down steep banks. Being a distance runner has helped a lot as far as the self-discipline you get mentally and then also physically. As far as a structural firefighter, starting 1980, I started in Midland in October 1st of 1980. Again, got into several local races, and I would wear a lot of times Midland Fire Department singlet and compete against people all over the state or all over the Southwest, because I've run the Duke City Marathon twice in Albuquerque, the Cowtown Marathon in Fort Worth, and Dallas White Rock, and Houston Tenneco, and some of those. And it was just cool having that pride of being a firefighter, because people that really have it together know when there's an emergency and building's on fire, you get out. What do? We go in. So what's wrong with this picture? No, that's what we're trained to do. And wearing an air pack and all that. A lot of times I could wear an air pack and get a lot more air out of it just because I could breathe. It just been in a lot of pretty tight situations. And then also in Texas, I was a paramedic for 8 years also. So I started a lot of IVs and worked on a lot of patients, and just a little bit of everything like that. It's pretty much my career until last September 1st. I retired as State College's first fire inspector after a little over 30 and a half years service there. And then, of course, coaching for 15 years also.
Let's talk about a little bit about Texas before you head home. The incidents as a paramedic, the famous incident that put that area maybe on the map, but baby Jessica rescue.
Yeah.
Was that something you were involved in?
Yes, I was a year before I made captain. I got promoted to captain through all the testing and everything. I was a captain and a paramedic in engine 2, B shift, station 2. We had 9 stations. Now they have 11 stations, over 200 career firefighters. But at the time I was a captain, and we were taking an incident command class, which pretty much everybody has incident command now, no matter if you're volunteer, career, doesn't matter. The incident command system was actually born in the Forest Service out west and migrated into the structural firefighting eventually. Chief Brunacini from Phoenix is one of the ones that really put it on the map years and years ago. We were taking our initial incident command class, all the officers in Midland, when we heard over the loudspeaker there that there was a call on Tanner Street, Station 6's district, about a child in a well. We thought, wonder what that's about. Our battalion chief, his name was Bob White. Bob came in a little while after that because he went to the dispatch office, came back and said, everybody go back to their stations. We have something developing now that's going to be a little unique, but just you guys all go back to your stations. We'll pick this class up later. Stay tuned. Okay. So my driver, Jim McCool, who also ran that 50-miler with me, and so did his brother, Joe, 3 of us trained together. Jim and I took the engine, went back to our station, and went out. We worked a 24-hour shift, and we were going to the store, and we have park our engine out in the parking lot further out. We'd go in, and they expected to see it. And they'll say they all the time. And how you guys doing? Yeah, we're good. Thanks. And we were shopping. And I remember Jerry Petrie, who was our fire marshal at the time, city of Midland, came up to us and said, hey, Dave, you got to go with me. Jim, you take the engine back to the station. I'll get somebody else to fill in Dave's spot. And I said, where are we going? I said, we're going out to, said something to do with that child in the well. Because really, we didn't know what was going on. He goes, yeah. He said, you need to come with me. I said, okay. So went out there, and because of my stature, I'm fairly slim and not real tall and in shape and everything, they wanted me to go down this hole that they had drilled with this rat hole rig as a big core bit that they use for highway construction, piers and things. And they drilled a paralleling hole. Said, you and just a few other people are going to be able to fit down this hole. Here's what we want to do. We want to try to drill from the paralleling hole, try to get up underneath her somehow. And I'm like, really? There wasn't very little of any kind of organization or anything. And I said, before we do that, I need a breathing air system because I don't know how much dirt and stuff. And I need a harness in case things cave in. I want to be pulled out of there. But we weren't sure what we were getting into. It ended up being what they call caliche rock. And caliche rock is real similar to our limestone we have in Pennsylvania. It's a sedimentary rock that's really hard. And like around in Pennsylvania, a lot of times we blast it and things, try to get, but we couldn't really blast with a child or no paralleling hole. What had happened was Jessica was 18 months old, and the kids that were being the daycare, they were 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, and they had her up by the arms like this, and they were swinging her around, and he put her in this little pipe that was sticking up out of the ground, not knowing what it was. They thought it was like a sandbox kind of thing, and she just like, uh-oh. The mom, Sissy McClure at the time, really had no recollection of what was going on. She got a phone call. She had to go inside real quick, came back out, and then she said, all right. She started doing a head count. Wait, where's Jessica at? And the kids were out walking around being all sheepish. And then finally one of them pointed down at the hole. She went down about 18 feet down an 8-inch hole and went into an earthen void. And the earthen void went down maybe 6 or 8 feet. And then there was another 6-inch pipe that went another 222 feet down from there, but she wouldn't have been able to fit in that. However, she was stuck in that earthen void with all the sticky vines and everything, almost like a big rectangle area. So there she was for 58 hours. So we punched a hole parallel and came up right underneath her. I tell people, you can believe in divine intervention if you want. It's up to you. But I do, because if we would have been a degree off one way or another, we would have never come up underneath her. We had no GPS. We were just like dead reckoning, like the old people in the sea did. We were just dead reckoning. We just came up underneath her. If they would have let the firefighters only do it, we would have had her out 12 hours sooner, because most of us were some sort of athletes. But they brought a lot of good old boy expert drillers in who were just out of shape. And we'd be like yelling at the supervisors and yelling down, get out of there. Come on. They'd run the drills for a little bit, and then they would bend down there and they were out of breath and they were out of shape. And we were yelling, come on, let us get down there. At the end of the first day, we were still trying to make our way through actually a perpendicular hole to the paralleling hole. And they said, you've done enough. You're going home. They sent me home. So went home, got some rest, came back. I turned on the TV and, oh my gosh, it's on TV. Wow, look at this. Didn't realize it went international. And so I went back and they were still working on trying to finish that hole up. And I went, wow. So went back down in there and assisted and everything. And eventually we got her out. Robert O'Donnell, who eventually pulled her out, I was his captain. And then the guy that came up with the red hat on, you see the picture when she's strapped on. That was my idea, to strap her on the board. And I had a guy named Billy Walker cut a board down, give me a bunch of Curlex and cling and all that we do use on the ambulance. We put her on that board, and Steve came up with her with the red hat. It's Steve Forbes. Steve was also a distance runner from Permian High School. Now, if you ever saw Friday Night Lights, that's Permian High School.
Oh, yeah.
Wife Betty went to that high school. I ran with Steve some too. Great, super nice people. Steve was also a former high school distance runner. Anyway, he's the one that came up with her there. And so we got her out after 58 hours, but fortunately she was alive, but she doesn't have any recollection of it to this day. But
that's probably
Leave it alone.
fortunate too. Yeah. That's
So
probably
anyway, that's-
fortunate too. Yeah.
but being in shape helped and everything there. And just that self-discipline, not giving up. You get that after you're a distance runner. Yeah. A lot of things that would maybe bother some people. We just push through things, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. But yeah.
One last thing on that, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's okay. I want to talk about the stresses of the job. And of course, baby Jessica was a great success, international interest, national TV and media, everybody. I'm sure you were interviewed by several people on site and afterwards about your role. And you're a humble guy. You speak well. The fact is, it's a stressful occupation that you spent decades in. And I'm sure not all of your colleagues made it through unscathed. It's a stressful thing. How did you handle the stress?
We didn't have any critical incident stress debriefing back like they do now, which I'm really glad they have. There's counseling now, which is great, and it should. But then there really wasn't any. And it was tough. I've seen some really bad things that I hope people don't have to see as a paramedic, and people decapitated, and just really some pretty grotesque things. But you just got to keep in your mind, though, you're there to make a difference. You're there to make a difference. You're there to try to have a positive outcome as best you can. Like doing CPR, for example. I have no idea how many times I've done CPR. Just countless numbers of times. I've lost count many years ago, and it's not a good thing. I'm just saying, it's one of those things that, yeah.
On behalf of everybody, thanks for everything you've done. I think you obviously have made a lot of positive difference. Let's talk
No, I
about
appreciate it.
how the end of your time in Midland came, going back to Pennsylvania. What happened there?
I put almost 12 years in Midland, but State College was hiring their first fire inspector to start a new fire prevention program with Center Region Code Administration, part of COG, Council of Governments in State College. My parents told me about it, sent me, back then, no email still, sent me the article and the application. I thought, here's a chance to get back to Pennsylvania because I really wanted to come back here. I applied for the job, and next thing I know, that was in September. In the end of September, I had an interview. It seemed like it went all right, but I couldn't really read from it. Our director of COG, Council of Governments, he's retired now, Jim Steff. Jim was also a high school distance runner for Erie Strong Vincent High School, up in Erie, PA. And he is Penn State alumni and everything. And he really liked the resume. He asked a lot of running questions during my interview. It was like, wow, I see you guys had an American record and I see you're a state champion. And hey, what was it like running the here and there? I'm thinking, this is cool. This guy's asking all these questions. Anyway, I didn't hear anything until a couple days before Christmas of 1991. They called me up one night at the station phone. It was our director of code administration, Harry Bird, and Harry offered me the job, but he told me what it was going to pay. And I said, I can't live on that, but thank you anyway. It pained me to say no, but I said
Right.
no. A couple days later, Jim Steff calls me. The director goes, well, what do we have to do to get you back here? So we haggled back and forth, and they came up with something that was doable. And I knew that there'd be chances for getting raises and those type of things. And you have to be able to live, obviously. And I had a house there. I wanted something similar in State College. So we worked something out. And in February of 92, I came back and started the program. September of 2022, just our last September 1st, was I retired after over 30 and a half years of being in that position. And it's been a good career. It really was. I think it made a lot of difference in fire codes and like the sprinkler systems and the fire alarm systems. I know we've had a lot of sprinkler saves and fire alarms that have saved people's lives, but that's not newsworthy. You don't ever hear about it, but it's just a good feeling that the fire prevention side is very important also. That ounce prevention better than the pound of cure, that old saying. It's true. It really is. Having that preventative thing is good. Going out west fighting fires. Once I moved back, I got on the Pennsylvania out-of-state DCNR team. I am a DCNR forest fire warden still, and I always will be pretty much as long as I live or I want to be. I do a lot of Smoky Bear programs, things like that. But we've been out west on a lot of really big fires. The most notable, I would say, was the fires of 2000 in western Montana. Those were huge. And there was one that was 179,000 acres. It was the largest fire in 50 years in Montana. And the second day we were on that fire, everything just blew up around us, around Sula, Montana area. And we were there for 2 weeks. All we saw for the next 2 or 3 days is day and night, just the mountains roared around us. It was just like a roaring freight train and just fire everywhere. It was crazy.
Adrenaline. Are you functioning on adrenaline, or have you is your pulse and cardiovascular stuff under control? What about the psychology of that?
Yeah, there is some adrenaline, definitely. When they put you in a division where there's a lot of fire and it's a real challenge and you have to dig fire line to try to contain it, you're racing that fire too. And there's a lot of adrenaline there. There's a lot of teamwork going on. We started out with 20 firefighters. By the end, we had 17. One guy got stung by bees and had a bad anaphylactic reaction, and 2 other guys just physically weren't ready for it. They ended up with us most of the time, but a couple times they were in a local hospital there. But the rest of us really just dug in and did our job. So.
Let's talk about your reintegration in the State College area.
Yes.
As an athlete and as a coach?
I didn't get into coaching until 2005, the spring. State College High School was looking for a middle distance and distance coach for track. I put in for the job and actually applied for the job. And let's see, let me just back up. The year before that, the girls team was looking for an assistant cross country coach. And I thought, Coach Donahue was still there. She's an excellent coach. She was a good runner in her day, like fifth in the Olympic trials a couple times. She says, I really wanted you to be my assistant, but I couldn't. You just all of a sudden were gone. I said, yeah, what happened was they had interviewed me, and 2 days later, there was a couple big fires in California, and we got shipped out on these fires. And I was gone for 2 weeks at a time. There's no getting a hold of me. So I said, thank you. I really appreciate that you thought about me there. And so the next year, that assistant track coach job came open and I put in for it. And I did that for that spring. Then that next fall, the head cross country coach was looking for an assistant coach. He said, would you be interested in doing that? I said, absolutely. So I started coaching cross country, indoor and outdoor for 4 years there. And then at my job, there was a downturn in construction and they were actually had to lay a couple people off in our office. And I said, I couldn't coach all year long. My director said, you need to pick one season. And I said, cross country, because that next year after the first year as an assistant coach in cross country, that coach then left and I interviewed and they gave me the head coaching job. And that was 15 years as the head coach. So just how that happened. And took over a team that was a lot of guys, no speed. It was frustrating. I could keep up with them and I was older. This shouldn't be happening. So I'm thinking, this isn't so good. So we really worked on it. And then we started getting a couple of pretty good runners coming up through Nittany track and field. It's Nittany track and field in cross country. It's a really great feeder program. So we don't have a middle school program. We have that. And that's a really great feeder program. Mark Fedkin is in charge of that. Mark is phenomenal. He's so good with the kids. And there's a whole lot of great assistant coaches in there that feed these kids up. Well, I started getting some of them. All of a sudden we started having some speed. And I remember the first time we've won 11 district titles in a row. I remember going over to, in your neighborhood, the old Forest Hills Middle School, which was way out in the middle of the country, out near that Deer Pen area. It wasn't near Forest Hills High School. It was way out towards Sidman, way out there, not too far from South Fork, way out. I remember that was the start of and we remember we ran against Altoona that day and they had a really good team. I felt like we had a really good team. We beat them by 1 point. And then the next week we were fourth in the whole state of Pennsylvania. See, now only one AAA team can go out of District 6 because we don't have that many large teams in District 6. The single A teams, they take 2. Big districts around Philadelphia, they'll take 5 AAA teams. And Pittsburgh area, 4 AAA teams and places like that. But we can only take 1. So I felt bad, even though we beat Altoona by 1 point. I feel like they would have been like 6th or 7th probably in the state that year too. It was a classic race and it came down to it. And it was really something. So we had a guy then who medaled in the state meet. And then the next year we won again and Alex Milligan ended up winning the district. He was my first district champion. And he ended up running for University of North Carolina, had a really good career there. And he actually ended up winning the state in the mile he has actually our school record now in the 1600. Great runner. And I remember he and a guy from Altoona got into a kick and he outleaned the guy at the end. And then since then, it's just been a buildup. And 2 years ago, I had a guy named Brady Bigger. Brady was a state champion in the state of Pennsylvania. He was state champion in cross country, a great runner. And now he's Church of Latter-day Saints. So they have to do 2 years of missionary work. He's almost done with his missionary work. So hopefully he's going to run for Brigham Young in the future, which they're always the top 3, top 5 men's NCAA cross country teams. Really good guy, really great family. So we've had a lot of success over the last several years. I hate giving up the coaching, but I did start a new career. We can talk about that at some point, but I just something else I wanted to do before I got much older.
Yeah. Let me ask you about when the idea of becoming a coach first you thought about? I know with your career, the schedule would have made it impossible for a long time, but had you considered being a coach before that? And what was your confidence level to be a coach when you first took the job?
2005 as an assistant coach, I wanted to see State College get back in the prominence in the state. It seemed like they were down for a few years. There wasn't much happening. The guys, and I thought, we've got to be doing better than this. And it sparked my interest in getting into coaching. Maybe I can help them make a difference, and had a lot of good support. That came about 2005. And my job as a fire inspector, they allowed me some time. I used some vacation time also. And they worked with me on that. It was good. So the Council of Governments was really good to me and allowed me to coach and also work my full-time job. It was good. So I worked for the school district for 16 years there.
I know you mentioned how important it was for you to make a difference, to make a positive impact, and I'm sure you had opportunities there as a coach. How did you feel about a couple things? One, the successes of your teams compared to reflecting back on your own individual success. And how did you coach athletes through struggles, failures, losses, and goal setting?
They, compared to the old days under Mr. Horner, and so the workouts we used to do, even a few years later, on the side, did a lot of arborist work, tree work. And I remember going over to Mr. Horner's house. It's a block away from here. And I would sit out in the backyard and just have him. It almost felt, let's say, I'm just going to say an example. This is like, let's say going into the priesthood, and you get to sit with the Pope.
Yeah, you're the disciple.
And that's what it felt like. And he would tell me all these things. He said, back then we would push you guys just so far. We got what we could out of you. And some people did get burned out, but he said, I can only push people. So he gave me so much great knowledge. So I knew with social media, all the things that are around now, we didn't have any of that back then. We had a lot less distractions back then. So I had to take that into account too, because these kids these days, those that want to work hard and those that don't want to, man, they're in some other universe somewhere. It's just not that discipline. But those that really do want to work hard and become good runners, man, and some of the workouts we would give them are similar to what we used to do, but not the same kind of schedule, because you can only push them a certain amount of, and I didn't want to get anybody injured. However, knew that we had to really work them certain ways, and it made a difference in trying to taper a workout to a meet, and then also put a workout in that was more applicable to more hill workouts before states, because of the hilly course down in Hershey, all those things, it really paid off. So that was, compared to what we did back then to what they do now, a little less overall speed work, but what we do was good and really stress the group running, the working as a team, working as a pack. We had a couple years there where we didn't have a whole lot of talent, but we won a lot of meets because we had a lot of guys up towards the front, and that helped. It helped in cross countries. If you have 5 guys that are way up there, they don't have to be first or second, but if they're come in 5th, 6th, 7th, 10th, and 12th, you're going to win the meet. That's just the way it is. And we started doing things like that, really stressing that, and guys bought into it. And
what about the mileage? Did you make these kids run 100 miles a week?
no, they didn't run near as much. If they put in 60 or 70, it was lucky. But there's one time we put maybe 80 miles in 1 week. It seemed like there were a lot more stress fractures these days and things that are just not. I know the biomechanics and all that, the shoes are better than what we had back then, but I don't know. Yeah. No, we've had a couple really good runners that were swimmers, but unfortunately, almost every time they would end up with a stress fracture somehow because they're not used to the pounding. Their cardiovascular was off the chart. Phenomenal. Great guys, but as swimmers, they could get in the pool then if they were hurt and still come back and still do fairly good. In fact, Mitchell Eder, for example, he was a state medalist in cross country for me. And then he went on the run for the University of Texas. But most of his success was in the pool, and all his brothers, same way. Not too many people have put in the mileage. Only a very few have, compared to what we did.
Yeah. You having the career that demanded you to stay in shape and stay physically fit, and also in strength and endurance. I'm sure you were a good role model for the kids as with a history, with a good attitude, with a positive attitude about all this stuff. What was it like to be home again? How important was it for you to be back where you had been an early athlete, formative years, great relationships with teammates and coaches, and now have your adult life set there?
I would say off the chart, excellent. Just because being home, I wanted to be home. It was almost surreal at times. I'm coaching a team I used to run for. It was like, really? This is great. And I pretty much bleed maroon and gray, state college colors. Yeah, I just really care about the program a lot, but it's about their success. I won't lie to you, Matthew. There's times where we're getting ready for a big race somewhere, and I get the guys out, they're doing striders before maybe 10 minutes before the gun goes off. And oh, so I don't do that anymore. I'm looking to put my spikes on and get out there and do striders. I don't do that anymore. But I still get that competitive urge. I did play 5 years of adult hockey at Penn State, ice hockey also. And that's a really great physical fitness type thing. It's really, I mean, you're just solid sweating, dripping off sweat with all the pads and those. But that was another thing too. I played with a lot of younger players, and usually towards the end of the game, those guys are getting a little sloppy, and all of a sudden I have a puck away and I'm going the other way with it, and I'm not tired yet. So that's all paid off. But really coaching a team that I ran for, it was just really rewarding, especially and I think I've left the team in pretty good shape. We got a couple of assistant coaches I hope will be able to get the job. I'm not sure what our athletic director has in mind. He combined the girls and boys track team last year. I don't think it's a good idea, but I'm just saying, I think it was some other thing that went on. I'm not sure what. I hope they don't do that for cross country. They need to be separate. Girls have excellent coaches. And I think the guys that was coaching with me, they're doing really well. Doug Shunk is one of my assistant coaches. He's run 13 or 14 marathons now and several ultras. And he was a big guy at one point, and he slimmed down. He's a chemistry teacher at State College. He also coaches the drum line in the band. He's a band coach also. I was a trombone player myself. I played all the way even through college. There's some really good people that could step up. So that's good.
Dave, you're a man of many talents. You're a very appreciative person. It's great to hear you and how much good things and appreciation you have to say for all the people that have crossed your path over these years. And you've got one of the best retirement stories. A lot of the people I'm talking to are in our same age bracket, but you've retired, but you're far from done. What's your next phase?
Okay. September 1st, I retired as a fire inspector, 15th year as a head coach. And after the state meet, we did really well in the state. Nick Sloat, he medaled in the state meet. He's going to be running for Penn State. Really good guy. He ran a 4:11, 1600 the other day at state meet. Really excellent time. I know Coach Gondike from Penn State, after the state meet, when I was going up to help him I have to put the medal around his neck and shake his hand at the victory stand down at Hershey. Coach Gondike comes up and he shakes his hand and says, "Nick, I'm really glad you'll be running for us next year." That makes me feel really good. But then from that point to, I'm doing things with the fire department, but I'm getting bored. And the end of January, 4 different families, fire department guys and another family, we all went on a Disney cruise together at the end of January. It was fun. When I got back, I was just, again, really bored. And I said to my wife, she's a physical therapist, she has probably another 9 years or so to work, 10 years or so. I said, all my life as a little kid, I've always been into railroads. When I was at Penn State, I was secretary of the Penn State Model Railroad Club. I still go over and help with the station at Lewistown occasionally with the Amtrak room. I have a couple of friends that wanted me to get on Amtrak with them, but I don't want to drive to Harrisburg every day. It's just a long drive from State College. And I thought, my great grandfather retired from the Pennsylvania Railroad. I have his retirement plaque. Both my grandfathers worked for the railroad. I had a great uncle that worked for the railroad, all in the Pittsburgh area, Pittsburgh division. And I thought, I've always wanted to do this. And she said, why don't you just apply? And I thought, I really deep down thought, I look at my resume and say, this guy's too old. But then I heard this friend of mine, Johnny, he's out of Lewistown. He's a really guy. He worked out of Enola and Harrisburg yards. He goes, no, they've done away with that because job discrimination, age discrimination. If you can do the job, they'll hire you. So you ought to apply. My wife says, yeah, you ought to apply. So I applied. It's Norfolk Southern. 24 hours later, I received an email saying, thanks for applying. And we have your application and your resume. I thought, that's nice. That's cool. And I was amused by it. Right. And then 48 hours later, I received, we want to interview you. And I said to my wife, uh-oh, it's real. And she said, are you serious? I said, oh my gosh. Okay. I had an interview and it was an online interview. It lasted like 20 minutes. They grilled me with a lot of safety questions and a lot of things. And I thought, obviously they see my birthday on there. They've got to think this old guy, we'll let you know in the next 24 hours. It wasn't like 6 or 7 hours later. One of the vice presidents, I got a recorded message from Norfolk Southern. We want to make you a job offer. No, this is what you need to do. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Wow. I can't believe this. So went through all the physical tests and all these different things. And so we'll let you know. Then I get this email May 1st. You need to be in McDonough, Georgia. And here's what you're going to go through. So my friends that are conductors told me, oh yeah, they gave me a heads up. So I went to a 3-week conductor school, passed everything. And now I'm a conductor trainee with Norfolk Southern and I'm working out of Altoona. That's my home yard. And I've been on trains already now from here to Pittsburgh and here to Harrisburg and working South Fork some, and then mostly out of Altoona. And early Monday morning, I'll be working on a helper service. The helpers like to push the trains up around the horseshoe curve. We work in helpers. Well, every other Tuesday, we have a CT class, conductor trainee class. And hopefully in a little less than 3 months, I'll get marked up as a full conductor. And then that's when my seniority starts. And yeah, I'll do this for a few years. I don't know how long, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that, maybe 10 years. Because they're talking guys working 20 and 30 years. And I'm 64. So not going to work for 30 years. But yeah, I was curious and I put in for it. And so far, so it's going well. It really is. I'm learning a lot and I did well at the school. It's a lot of physical and even through any college classes, whatever. That's the hardest I ever studied in 3 weeks ever was at that school in McDonough, Georgia, which is south of Atlanta. 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to get sent home. And 2, I didn't want to fail. There's that competitive spirit again. So I did well on it and very thankful that I had the opportunity and thankful now I have a really good supervisors, and they're working with me. They actually let me go on vacation. Now it was without pay, but I understand, but they honored my previous arrangements I had since last October. They didn't have to do that, but they did. And I'm really enjoying it. Even some of the people there say, you're crazy, you're nuts. I said, maybe, but I'm enjoying this. Other people go, hey, good for you. I don't know. It's so far so good. There's a lot of work. There's a lot to learn. There's this much to learn. And I know this much right now, but that's why I'm a trainee. Yeah. So have some really good crews I've been working with and some really good teachers. Now it's very much heads up. It's very much safety oriented because you have millions of tons moving around you all the time and you can't let your guard down. Safety first all the time. But I'm really enjoying it. I think since we skipped a generation with my dad's side, but my grandfathers, great grandfathers, and it's cool picking up the family, bringing the railroad back into the family again. So I don't know if that's anything to it or not. My brothers were like, yeah, that's cool. And my daughters are like, Dad, cool. That's really neat. I don't know.
I think the best words to say are congratulations. And
Well, thank you.
I don't want to say you've led a charmed life. I know you've worked hard for everything you've accomplished, but it is a bit of a fairy tale. Growing up as a very successful athlete, getting to know and work with legendary coaches, having a big impact on people's lives in another part of the country, and then heading home, going back home. It's a wonderful story. You're a great, positive person who tells stories well. So it's been great to catch up on all that and hear your great, successful story and that you're still at this point pursuing a childhood dream.
No, thank you. No, I appreciate it. I know that back in the day when we ran in the 70s, there was a lot of good people. You remember Ange Giosa from Altoona and that old, do you remember the Logan Elementary? They still run the cross country meets over there. Same course basically, except that big hill is not stones and mud and broken glass. It's a beautiful, even though it's almost like it's all wood chips now. It's really nice. But they named that Giosa Hill. And rightfully, because Ange was a legend too. And before he passed away, I got to go to a district track meet at Mitchell Park. I remember buying him a hot dog and we sat in the stands and talked about the old days. And that was priceless. It really was. Those guys from back then were amazing. They really were.
This has been fun for me. I think people are really going to be interested in the way you tell the stories of your career and service. That is a compelling thing. And the going home story is just priceless. This should be in a book, Dave. Your story should be in a book.
I know Coach Groves, just a few years ago, he said, hey, a couple of your teammates, Larry Mangan from Pittsburgh and another guy, I forget who it was, they eventually broke the 4-minute mile. He said, they never beat you in a mile. He said, I apologize. I had to use you every weekend in something different because we needed points to win these meets. And I said, Coach, I said, it's okay. It's all right. I was just happy to run. I got down to 4:03 a couple times, but I never got to specialize in the mile. But I believe I could have broke the 4-minute, but that's okay. It's okay. Cause I said, Coach, you saved my parents thousands of dollars by having a scholarship. And I just appreciate that. Oh, another person that's in the area still, Greg Fredericks is still here.
Wow.
Greg was an Olympian, 1980 Olympian. Greg is probably one of the greatest distance runners ever at Penn State. And he's a super guy and he's still around. I see him occasionally. Actually, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and my father-in-law, they go to the same church. And occasionally if I go down there, I see Greg. But Greg was with Coach Groves every day until he passed away. He was more than family. He was there every day with him. But Greg was an amazing runner. In the NCAA cross country meet, the only guy that beat him was Steve Prefontaine.
Wow.
That's it. And they were neck and neck. When Steve Prefontaine won the NCAA, I think it was that last year, they set that record. Greg was just a couple steps behind him. And Greg, in that book called Pre, you'll see a picture of him running a little victory lap, and you can see Greg running with him, just smiling. So I asked Greg about that. He said, yeah, I'm just sitting there stretching afterwards. Pre comes up to me. He goes, hey, he goes, come on, get up and run this lap with me. Run this victory lap. That's how good Greg was. He was second only to Steve Prefontaine. That's elite company there.
Yeah. That guy you mentioned, Shunk, is that the Altoona Shunks? I had a teammate.
Yes.
Steve Shunk, who ended up being on the 4x400 Division II All-American relay at IUP. Steve.
That's his uncle.
Okay.
That's his uncle.
Oh, he'll like hearing this.
Yeah, that's his uncle. Super good guy. I really hope he gets the head coaching job. I really do. I hope they offer it to him. He's observant of it.
Anyhow, it's good to hear your life is great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. It's been really great. It's been really great catching up with you. This is really super. So thank you.
I'll talk to you again, Dave. Thanks.
Matthew, take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.